welcome to another edition of Saluting New Readers. My name is Sheri Doerr, and today we invite you to listen to my 5th grade students from Mount St. Mary's School.
Hi, my name is Michael Garcia, and I'll be reading Miss Frisbee and the Rats and Them. Miss Frisbee, the head of a family of field mice, lived in an underground house in a vegetable garden of a farmer named Mr. Fitzgibbon. It was a winter house, such as some field mice move to when food becomes too scarce, and the living too hard in the woods and pastures. In the soft earth of a bean, potato, black-eyed pea, and asparagus patch, there is plenty of food left over for mice. After the human crop has been gathered, Miss Frisbee and her family were especially lucky in the house itself. It was a slightly damaged cinder block, the hollow kind with 2 oval holes to it. It had somehow been abandoned in the garden during the summer and lay almost completely buried, with only a bit of a corner showing above the ground, which is how Miss Frisbee had discovered it. It lay on its side in such a way that the solid parts of the block formed a roof and a floor with waterproof and the hollows made 2 spacious rooms lined with bits of leaves, grass, cloth, cotton, fluff, feathers, and other soft things. Miss Frisbee and her children had collected the house stayed dry, warm, and comfortable all winter. A tunnel to the surface earth of the garden dug so that it was slightly larger than a mouse and slightly smaller than a cat's foreleg. Provided acres there and even a fair amount of light to the living room. The bedroom formed by the second oval was warm but dark, even at midday. A short tunnel through the earth behind the block connected the 2 rooms. If you want to know how the story ends, check it out at your local library.
Hi, my name is Kiara, and I'm going to read The Piano Man. It looked like a perfectly beautiful day. The sun shone down in its usual way. I finished my milk and I went out to play. Imagine my shock as I got to the hall and found that the stairs weren't there at all, but just an enormous sliding scale of piano keys like a fairy tale. I slid down the scales, and where was I at? Right on top of a tall top hat. And then I remembered I'd seen him before. I knew from the red carnation he wore. "Don't I look grand?" he asked with a wink, "or would you prefer my carnation in pink?" "That," I replied, "is a trivial matter. It's much more important to talk to your hatter and find out what manner of creature you are, piano or person or walking guitar. I certainly don't find it very amusing, conversing with someone so strange and confusing. You're looking for answers, but what is the question? Who cares who I am? Just take my suggestion. Forget all the plans you had for today and travel with me in a magical way. You'll find yourself flying as if you had wings. I'm able to do the most uncommon things." I took a deep breath and then I nodded, "Okay." Then he told me the rules I'd have to obey in this magical game we were going to play. You pick a note and you sing it out clear, and that will decide where we're going from here. "See," I began, and before I had ended, high in the sky we had swiftly ascended, whirling and swirling and looping the loop, showing the birds how to dive and to swoop. And wow, what a dizzy, delirious ride, what a powerful feeling to soar and to glide. I sang out with a lot of emotion, and where were we now? In the depths of the ocean, swimming like fishes, squiggling like eels, learning to feel like an octopus feels. We dove to the bottom and made lots of grabs at lobsters and oysters and crayfish and crabs. We gathered up seaweed and mocked all the divers who went around in circles like racing car drivers. G took us right from that watery bed to the land of the sand and the palm tree instead, the desert as hot as a fresh loaf of bread. The camels walked haughtily by without turning, as cool as could be while my poor feet were burning. So I sang out, G sharp, thinking thoughts of the north, and in one frozen second my friend brought us forth to the land where the penguins and popsicles grow, and the temperatures are always 100 below. Those penguins were snooty and dressed for a dance, and they wouldn't so much as give us a glance. B, I began, and before I was done, we were deep in the jungle where monkeys have fun, screeching at parrots and swinging through trees, and twirling their tails around visitors' knees. The noise hurt my ears, and my head started aching, and anyway, nighttime was just about breaking. D, I called softly, and that was enough. My friend, the piano, the pilot went puff. Over the treetops and up to the sky, we sailed and we sang and we played, he and I. A jungle, a desert, the North Pole and back, all in one day without having to pack. I felt myself suddenly spinning around, sinking and blinking and hitting the ground. Crash went a chord and I wobbled and I shook, and where was my friend? I started to look. Don't search, called a voice, I'm way out of sight, but some other day sing a note that's just right. And who knows, you may find me waiting, my friend, but for now it's farewell. We've come to the end. Thanks for listening to me read.
Hi, I'm Trini, and I'm going to be reading Ringer. Farquhar rolled up Palmer's left shirt sleeve to the top of his shoulder so that the entire arm was bare. Farquhar studied the arm for a long time, pressing, feeling like a doctor. Finally, he said to Beans, "Put your finger right here. Don't move till I say." Palmer felt Beans' fingertips on his arm, like on a bony part about halfway between the elbow and the shoulder. Farquhar spat on his own fingertip, rubbed the tip in dirt, and with the resulting mud, made a mark on Palmer's arm where Beans' finger had been. At this point, when it was rumored some kids wet their pants. "Blindfold," said Farquhar. Palmer looked over the peaceful scene, people playing, walking in the park, the trees, children's shop. "No," he said, but nothing came out. His throat had turned to sand. He coughed, swallowed, and tried again. "No." "Okay," said Farquhar, "don't move." "And don't look," thought Palmer. That's what he always heard on the street. If you ever get the treatment, don't look. By the time Farquhar bunched up his fist and stuck out the knuckle of his middle finger, it was as hard as a ball-peen hammer and as sharp as a spear. Bad enough you had to feel it. Don't make things worse by watching it coming. Farquhar took a position to Palmer's left side. He backed off a step, spread his legs, planted his feet firmly. He crouched, lowering himself. Palmer felt a gust of beefsteak breath. Beans and Meadow stood directly in front, grinning as if watching someone about to get a hot foot. Palmer wished he had asked for the blindfold. Henry was off to the side. Palmer took a quick look at him and wished he hadn't. Henry was not grinning. His eyes were as wide as a hangman's noose. Palmer turned back to find Beans' grin wider than ever. Beans had the most incredible teeth Palmer had ever seen. Beans swore he had not brushed them since the big ones came in. At one time or another, Palmer had seen every color in the crayon box on Beans' teeth. Their major color was a dull yellowish brown fringed with green. Beans and Meadow shouted, "One!" as the first rap hit, and Palmer understood it instantly, the genius of Farquhar. He understood that Farquhar somehow knew his body better than he himself did, and there was no need to rear back like a baseball pitcher and bring the whole fist. That, when the perfect spot was found, the tip of a knuckle fired from a mere 6 inches away is enough so that Palmer's whole body was sucked into a suddenly new sinkhole in his arm. Thank you for listening to me read. If you want to find out how the story ends, check it out at your local library.
Hi, I'm Tyler, and I'm going to be reading White Fang. One night, White Fang awoke and realized that some stranger was in the house. His nose picked up an unfamiliar scent, and his ears heard unusual movements. Without making a sound, the wolf dog arose and walked softly toward those movements. He reached the foot of the great staircase. His eyes were accustomed to seeing in the dark, and he was able to see a man who was about to go up the staircase. White Fang did not, of course, know who this man was. However, he knew the stranger did not belong in the house, and he was about to go up where the master and his family were. White Fang crouched silently and sprang. His forepaws struck the stranger's back, and his fangs sank into the flesh on the back of his neck. The two of them crashed to the floor. The wolf dog aimed his next thrust at the man's throat. As he rushed, the sound of revolver shots rang in his ears. He felt bullets tearing through his body. In spite of the searching pain, he clamped his fangs in the exposed throat and completed his fatal attack. He rolled over on the floor. He lay there, the blood pouring from his wounds. The lights came on. Weed and Scott and the judge came down the stairs cautiously. Each man held a revolver in his hand. The stranger was laying face up on the floor, obviously dead. "It's Jim Hall," the judge exclaimed. "I guess he did get his revenge. But how did White Fang get in here?" "I have no idea," Whedon said. He knelt on the floor to examine the wolf dog. "He's still alive, but barely. Hal shot him, and he's lost a lot of blood. I doubt that he will survive." "He will, if I have anything to do with it," the judge declared. "That animal probably saved my life. He saved the life of every person in this house. Now we have to do our best to save his life." As the judge spoke, he went to the telephone. He called his own surgeon and briefly explained what had happened. The surgeon soon arrived and worked on White Fang for an hour and a half. The entire family, except for the children, gathered to hear the results of the examination. He has a broken hind leg, the surgeon began, which is the least of his injuries. 3 of the ribs are fractured. 1 has pierced the lung. He was shot 3 times and the bullets went clear through his body. Because of that, he's lost almost all of his blood. The surgeon paused to let that sink in, then continued, "I will give him perhaps 1 chance in 10,000 of making it." Thank you for listening to me read. If you want to know how this book ends, you can check it out at your local library.
Hi, my name is Zoe McClarty, and I'm going to be reading Polar Express. On Christmas Eve many years ago, I lay quietly in my bed. I did not rustle the sheets. I breathed slowly and silently. I was listening for a sound a friend had told me I'd never hear, the ringing bells of Santa's sleigh. "There is no Santa," my friend insisted, but I knew he was wrong. Late that night, I did hear sounds, though not of ringing bells. From outside came the sounds of hissing steam and squeaking metal. I looked through my window and saw a train standing perfectly still in front of my house. It was wrapped in an apron of steam. Snowflakes fell lightly around it. The conductor stood at the open door of one of the cars. He took a large pocket watch from his vest, then looked up at my window. I put on my slippers and robe and tiptoed downstairs and out the door. "All aboard!" the conductor cried out. I ran up to him. "Well," he said, "are you coming?" "Where?" I asked. "Why, to the North Pole, of course," was his answer. "This is the Polar Express." I took his outstretched hand, and he pulled me aboard. The train was filled with other children, all in their pajamas and nightgowns. We sang Christmas carols and ate candies with nougat centers as white as snow. We drank hot cocoa as thick and as rich as melted chocolate bars. Outside, the lights of the town and villages flickered in the distance as the Polar Express raced northward. Soon there were no more lights to be seen. We traveled through the cold, dark forest, where lean wolves roamed and white-tailed rabbits hid from our train as it thundered through the quiet darkness. We climbed mountains so high it seemed as if we would scrape the moon. But the Polar Express never slowed down. Faster and faster we ran along, rolling over peaks, through valleys like a car on a roller coaster. The mountains turned into hills, the hills to snow-covered plains. We crossed a barren desert of ice, the great polar ice cap. Lights appeared in the distance. They looked like lights of a strange ocean liner on a frozen sea. There, said the conductor, is the North Pole. Thank you for listening to me, Ruth. If you'd like to know what happens to the Polar Express, please check this book out at your local library.
Hi, my name is Simon Smith, and I'm going to be continuing my reading of Harry Potter. As he looked at Dudley and his new knickerbockers, Uncle Vernon said gruffly that it was the proudest moment of his life. Aunt Petunia burst into tears and said she couldn't believe it was her Uncle Dudleykins. He could look so handsome and grown up. Harry didn't trust himself to speak. He thought two of his ribs might already have cracked from trying not to laugh. There was a horrible smell in the kitchen the next morning when Harry went in for breakfast. It seemed to be coming from a large metal tub in the sink. When Harry went to have a look, the tub was full of what looked like dirty rags swimming in gray water. "What's this?" he asked Aunt Petunia. Her lips tightened as they always did if he dared to ask a question. "Your new school uniform," she said. Harry looked in the bowl again. "Oh," he said, "I didn't realize it had to be so wet." "Don't be stupid," snapped Aunt Petunia. "I'm dyeing some of Dudley's old things gray for you. It'll look just like everyone else's when I finish." Harry seriously doubted this, but thought it best not to argue. He sat down at the table and tried not to think about how he was going to look on his first day at Stonewall High. Like he was wearing bits of old elephant skin, probably. Dudley and Uncle Vernon came in, both with wrinkled noses because of the smell from Harry's new uniform. Uncle Vernon opened his newspaper as usual, and Dudley bandaged his smelting stick, which he carried everywhere on the table. They heard the click of the mail slot and flop of letters on the doormat. "Get the mail, Dudley," said Uncle Vernon from behind his paper. "Make Harry get it. Get the mail, Harry. Make Dudley get it. Poke him with your smelting stick, Dudley." Harry dodged the smelting stick and went to get the mail. 3 things lay on the doormat: a postcard from Uncle Vernon's sister, Marge, who was vacationing on the Isle of Wight, a brown envelope that looked like a bill, and a letter for Harry. Harry picked it up and stared at it. His heart twanged like a gallant elastic band. No one ever in his whole life had written to him. Who would? He had no friends, no other relatives. He didn't belong to the library, so he never even got rude notes asking for books back. Yet here it was, a letter addressed so plainly there could be no mistake. If you want to find out how it ends, check it out at your local library.
Hi, I'm Colleen Heiser, and I will be reading Voyage on the Great Titanic. My hands are shaking. I feel hot tears struggling against my eyes, and I have no idea where to begin. I feel a driving needle to tell everything properly, exactly the way it happened, but my mind is cluttered with confusion and exclusion and despair and grief. I am overcome by grief. The boat deck. I will go back to the boat deck and follow the evening crew from now. Or no, the story begins earlier, so that is where I will start. It was after midnight, and I could still hear people moving about the passageway before I had time to go out and join them. There was a sharp knock on my door. I opened it to see Robert. and he was smiling, but his eyes looked different. "Good evening, Miss Brady," he said. "You need to put on something warm and report to the boat deck with your life belt, Miss Brady." And I heard that. I felt alarmed for the first time, but I was also startled. Have I done something to him? That would be terrible. I must have looked upset because he reached out to pat my arm. "A routine drill," he said. No need to get startled." I knew he needed to get on with his duties, so I found a smile and put it on and nodded. If he said it was a routine, it must be a routine. Robert started for the next room, but then he stopped. "You'll not want to take your time, Margaret," he said in a very quiet voice. It did not seem possible. Maybe this was not a drill. "Robert," I started. "Please," he said. "There's no time to waste." He looked so worried that I did not want to trouble him with any questions, so I just nodded. "Surely that must... I have already woken Miss Karsten, but you will not want to... you will not want to... her along." He said. I nodded again and patted my arm once more before moving on to the next room. My hands terribly trembled as swift as I pulled on my warmest clothes. My button boots with thickest petticoat and gray skirt, white gloves, and my old brown sweater. Over this, I wore Father's black wool coat, tucking my gloves into my pocket. This diary into the other. On further reflection, I slipped off his copy of Hamlet as well, and checked to make sure Mommy's locket was safely around my neck. Then I pulled the lifebelt over my head and fastened it securely. The lifebelt was buckled so that I was hard to walk, so even move my arms. If you'd like to hear the rest of the story, please check it out at your local library.
Hi, my name is Brian. I'm going to be reading Garfield's Scary Tales, Terminal Terror. In fact, I crave it. John, bring the cat to me. I want to drain his brain. John reached for Garfield, but the cat managed to scoot through his legs and out of the room. "Get him!" the computer ordered. John chased the frightened pet from room to room. There was no place to hide. Garfield was running out of breath. Turning a corner in the hall, he nearly tripped over Odie. That gave Garfield an idea. "Odie, stay right there," he said, drawing the basement door. Seconds later, John rounded the corner, tripped over Odie, and sprawled headfirst down the basement stairs. Garfield slammed the door and locked it. "Sorry, John," said Garfield. "I'll be back for you just as soon as I short-circuited that mechanical monster." Garfield grabbed Odie and ran into the kitchen. Suddenly, the freezer door swung open. Ping, ping, ping. The ice maker began bombarding Garfield and Odie with ice cubes. "Let's get out of here!" cried Garfield, using a pan lid as a shield, and he and Odie made their escape. "Your situation is hopeless," boomed the computer. "Surrender now!" The two pets took refuge into the bedroom. "That evil machine plans to suck out my smarts," Garfield said to Odie. "I'll be as dumb as a rock, or broccoli, or you!" Suddenly, Garfield's eyes opened wide. "That's it, Odie! We need to find John's orange t-shirt, and the black marker. Hurry!" "Arf," said Odie. A short time later, an orange and black figure padded into the den. So, you're giving up, said the computer. A wise decision. 2 wires tipped out with electric snakes out of the computer and attached themselves to the orange and black creature's head. At last, your brain is mine. The computer began to hum. Numbers flashed on and off the screen. You're fighting it, said the computer. Very well, I can fix that. The computer hummed louder. Your mind is very strong, Cat, but mine is stronger. I'll increase my power. The screen flashed more rapidly. What? You still resisting? How dare you? Growled the computer. I'll double my power. And double it again. There was a crackling sound. What? What's happening? My circuits! No! My circuits are melt. There was a loud bang of smoke. The screen went dead. The voice was stilled. Garfield rushed into the room and hugged Odie. You did it, Odie. You did it. Your disguise fooled him. Arf, said Odie. Mr. Know-it-all computer thought you were me, explained Garfield. But trying so hard to drain your brain, he overloaded his circuits. See, he can't suck out your smarts, because you don't have any. And tonight, I'm glad you don't. Arf, arf, barked Odie. You know, Odie, said Garfield. You may not be bright, but you're brave. Come on, let's get John out of the basement. After all this, he owes us a snack. Thank you for listening to me read.
Hi, I'm Josh Smith, and I'm going to be reading Bridge to Terabithia. His head thud. He leaned his weight upon the door of the pickup and let his head thud against the window. His father drove swiftly without speaking, though once he cleared his throat as though he were going to say something, but he glanced at Jess and closed his mouth. When they pulled up at the house, his father sat quietly and Jess could feel the man's uncertainty. So he opened the door and got out, and with the numbness flooding through him, went in and lay down on his bed. He jerked suddenly into consciousness in the black stillness of the house. He sat up, stiff and shivering, although he was fully dressed from a windbreaker down to his sneakers. He could hear the breathing of the little girls in the next bed, strangely loud and uneven, and the quiet dream must have awakened him, but he could not remember it. He could only remember the mood of dread it had brought him. Through the curtainless window, he could see the lopsided moon with hundreds of stars dancing in bright attendance. It came to his mind that someone had told him that Leslie was dead, but he knew now that had been a part of the dreadful dream. Leslie could not die any more than himself could die. But the words turned over uneasily in his mind, like leaves stirred up by a cold wind. If he got up now and went down to the old Perkins place and knocked on the door, Leslie would come to open it, P.T. jumping after her heels like a star around the moon. It was a beautiful night. Perhaps they could run over the hill across the fields to the stream and swing themselves into Terabithia. They had never been there in the dark, but there was enough moon for them to find their way into the castle, and he could tell her about his day in Washington and apologize it had been so done with him not to ask if Leslie could go. He and Leslie and Miss Edmonds could have a wonderful day, different, of course, from the day he had Miss Edmonds had, but still good. Still perfect. Miss Edmund and Leslie liked each other a lot. It would have been fun to have Leslie along. I'm really sorry, Leslie. He took off his jacket and sneakers and crawled under the covers. I was dumb not to think of asking. Leslie would say, "I've been to Washington thousands of times. Did you ever see the buffalo hunt?" Somehow it was the one thing in all Washington that Leslie had never seen, and so he could tell her about it, describing the tiny beasts hurtling to destruction. His stomach felt suddenly cold. It had something to do with a buffalo, with falling, with death, with the reason he had not remembered to ask if Leslie could go with them to Washington today. Thank you for listening to me read. If you want to know how the story ends, check it out at your library.
Read a good book and have a Merry Christmas.
What school do you go to?
Mount St. Mary's.
And what grade are you in?
5th.
And what do you love?
Read.